is over. The time of the Orc has come.
In the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, the exact process of Orc reproduction is a bit of a grey area. However, we do get some hints in different areas to how this race managed to survive, so I shall try and wade through those texts today to find us an answer. So whether you're a die-hard fan of The Lord of the Rings or simply just curious about this topic, sit back and enjoy the video.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Remember everyone, if you find this video helpful, informative, or entertaining today, please remember to hit that subscribe button below. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on any of our latest videos, and you'll be supporting us to continue creating great content like this. Quickly though, before we dive into the meat that is back on the menu, I just wanted to let you all know we do have plans to have a big revamp of our Patreon at the moment. With the filming now well underway for our short film and plans for better and more perks, keep your eyes and ears peeled for future updates. There, countless became the hosts of his beasts and his demons, and the race of the Orcs, bred long before, grew and multiplied in the bowels of the earth. Now, the matter of how orcs reproduce in Tolkien's creations presents several varied explanations. Tolkien tended to alter his perspective over the years, never arriving at a singular, concrete answer before his death. So, what are these diverse theories? Let us start by delving into the depths of the fall of Gondolin. How it came ever that among men the Noldoli have been confused with the orcs who are Malco's goblins, I know not, unless it be that certain of the Noldoli were twisted to the evil of Malco and mingled among these orcs. For all that race were bred by Malco of the subterranean heats and slime. Their hearts were of granite and their bodies deformed. Foul their faces which smiled not, but their laugh that of the clash of metal, and to nothing were they more fain than to aid in the basest of the purposes of Malco. The greatest hatred was between them and the Noldoli, who named them Glamhoth, or folk of dreadful hate. As we can see from this, it was at one point considered by Tolkien that Morgoth created the race of orcs himself as a way to mock the elves. That must mean that they cannot or do not breed, as they can almost be considered to be carved out by some greater power. With this power being continued after Morgoth by his second-in-command Sauron, and then later by Saruman as well. However, later in life, Tolkien changed his thoughts on this idea and made it that in his world, Morgoth could not actually produce any life of his own. So that could well just take this option off the table already. What this means then is that we go down the path of orcs being created solely by Morgoth corrupting and mutilating already living elves. So as elves breed sexually, then surely the basic form of life would not have changed that much, so that leads to orcs to breed in the same way. This meaning that there are actually both male and female orcs, just as there would have been both male and female elves. Something that backs up this theory is from the Silmarillion, where it says, "And thus did Malcor breed the hideous race of the orcs in envy and mockery of the elves, of whom they were afterwards the bitterest foes. For the orcs had life and multiplied after the manner of the children of Ilúvatar, and naught that had life of its own, nor the semblance of life, could ever Malcor make since his rebellion in the Ainulindale before the beginning." So surely to multiply in the manner of the children of Ilúvatar means that they can only mean they were born in the same way too. A theory for the actual female orcs as well could even be that they were treated like the way that the dwarves treat the dwarven women.
It's true you don't see many dwarf women, and in fact, they are so alike in voice and appearance that they're often mistaken for dwarf men.
The basic idea of this would be that the orc women would not be seen by other races, as they would either not travel much, fight in battles, or really get involved in anything outside of their own race. So they would basically just stay in their homes or caves or mud pits or whatever, and almost be there solely for the responsibility of breeding. Which, when you think about it, would not be the most unrealistic thing to think when the orcs are a race that have spawned out of just mockery and darkness. In a world where you have talking trees, dragons, fire demons, would this really be the most unrealistic aspect of Middle-earth? I don't think so. To further back this point up too, when you look at Tolkien's writings, you see that, although there are obviously women in the world, you have the great ones like Éowyn, Arwen, and many more, they are very scarcely written about in the grand scheme of it all. So, for orc women not to be talked about too much, again makes sense with the way that Tolkien wrote things. Or to add one more bit to this, there is a very good possibility that even if they went into wars and they did fight alongside the men, by the time you put armor on them, they very well just looked so alike to male orcs that no one would ever know the difference either way. What could potentially be a more awkward part of this question is when it comes to some of the dealings of crossbreeding. If we open up the pages to The Lord of the Rings for a moment, and we take a look at the quote spoken by Gamling of Rohan in The Two Towers, he says, "But these creatures of Isengard, these half-orcs, and goblin men that the foul craft of Saruman has bred, they will not quail at the sun," said Gamling, "and neither will the wild men of the hills. Do you not hear their voices?" From this quote, Gamling is talking about the Uruk-hai, but what it also shows us is how there was this dark path that Saruman was not afraid to wander down. It is considered that Saruman was the one who initiated some crossbreeding, with him forcing the Dunlendings into it. This could then obviously mean, for a not-so-nice thought, that he gave male orcs hill women, or hill men female orcs. Not the most pleasant thought, I will admit to that. This would give an explanation into the origins of some of his spies too, like the squint-eyed southerner that is mentioned to be seen by Frodo when in Bree during the Fellowship of the Ring. Most of them were ordinary men, rather tall and dark-haired, and grim but not particularly evil-looking. But there were some others that were horrible, man-high, but with goblin faces, sallow, leering, squint-eyed. Do you know, they reminded me at once of that southerner at Bree, only he was not so obviously orc-like as most of these were. Now let's move on to another option, and again, a lot of this is a bit of me theorizing, so it, could be taken as a bit of a what-if kind of question. But anyway, if orcs could not, or simply had no interest in breeding sexually, then another option is that they were simply just grown. This is the pathway that the legendary trilogy seem to wander down. We see that the Uruk-hai are pulled from the mud in the movies, almost like they've been grown in a cocoon and then dug out when they're ready. But how does this work? Is it magic? Seedlings? Something like a potion recipe? What about if you plant an orc bone, give it enough water, then 5 more grow in its place? Okay, now yes, that one does sound a bit stupid, but technically these aren't ever ruled out as options, as much as they may be clutching at straws, it is not confirmed otherwise at the same time. You may wonder though, why is this the case? Was this subject purposely avoided, or was it just a subject that didn't seem to hold much importance to Tolkien himself? I personally think it is the case of, if we think again to one of the many changes Tolkien made in his time, we've got to remember back to the beginning, where we have that first point of how only Eru Ilúvatar could create new life. None of the other Valar, not Malkor, no one else except Eru. And that was something that Malkor was extremely jealous of. This power came from the secret fire, also known as the Flame Imperishable, and that is the same one that Gandalf says he is a servant of when he fights against the Balrog.
I am a servant of the secret fire.
So it is impossible for them to just be created as such, most likely circling back to the point of earlier, orcs are a mockery of elves, having twisted those beings from being the fair children of Ilúvatar into the orcs that we all know and fear, most likely keeping their reproductive methods the same in that way. Do you think that this has helped clear things up at all for you? Well, let me add another point that may or may not add more confusion to this subject. If we take a sidestep for a moment, let's have a look at the Hobbit book. It mentions that the commander that leads the orcs is called Bolg, and Bolg is the son of Azog. He obtains Azog's position and army when his dad is slain by Dane Ironfoot. So, that implies that some orc power comes down to basically a family lineage, just like humans would. But it could also be fair to think that the wording is a non-literal use of the word son, and that meaning, as Bolg was Azog's next in line as commander, they just spoke of him like a son. This is something I believe more people might lean towards, as by the time Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings, any types of sons, fathers, or children when talking about orcs have no mentioning at all. But now, one last point in this subject comes from a letter from the man himself, J.R.R. Tolkien, as he wrote to a Mrs. Munby in 1963 in response to a few questions that her son has. There must have been orc women, but in stories that seldom if ever see the orcs except as soldiers of armies in the service of the evil lords, we naturally would not learn much about their lives. Not much was known. So, from Tolkien's own mouth, or hand, I guess, there must have been orc women, but not much was known, even to him. So there we have it. This was a strange one to research and write about, and I hope it was at least interesting to listen to. In our quest to understand the breeding habits of orcs in Tolkien's expansive universe, we have ventured through various theories and texts that offer hints but no definitive answers. From the possibility of orcs being twisted as a mockery of elves created by Morgoth, which hints at conventional reproductive methods, to the unsettling narratives of crossbreeding initiated by figures like Saruman. Either way, the theories tend to be a bit dark. Even Tolkien himself seemed to grapple with the exact nature of orc reproduction, leaving room for interpretation and further exploration. While the depiction of familial connections in orc society, as evidenced by characters like Bolg and Azog, hints at some form of lineage, it also thickens the plot in this intriguing discussion. The breeding habits of orcs in Tolkien's world have and will remain a mystery, one that invites readers to delve deeper into the rich, complex, and sometimes ambiguous world that Tolkien crafted. But these are the kind of mysteries that just lead us all to be massive fans of Tolkien's work and keeps his world going strong after all of these years. With that now though, it is time for my question of the day, which is, which theory do you lean towards? Or do you not really care whichever way it falls? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section down below. And now to shout out our patrons. You guys have been amazing in supporting our short film project. We have got some amazing updates coming soon. We are really making good progress and I cannot thank you all enough. We have the Divine Power tier member of Kevin, the Fire Demon tier member of Nashith, and the Wizard Staff tier members of John, Andrew, and Hunter. You are all true legends of the Brohirrim. Finally, I really appreciate your time in watching this video today. If you've enjoyed the content, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell icon with notifications enabled, so that you will get notified when all future videos are released. Thank you once again for your support, and I look forward to seeing you next time on The Broken Sword.